I'm going to be telling you about various obscure internet rabbit holes. Some of them are pretty unsettling, some of them are just kind of funny, some of them are just completely bizarre. I hope you enjoy. Here we go. Also, we're out in the woods right now. Roy J. On April 4th of 2025, a user posted on 4chan's X board, "This is a demon writing itself retroactively into pop culture history. You think this is a shitpost, but you'll remember him from your childhood soon enough." And attached with this text was an image that read Roy J. Now, presumably, no one in the thread really knew who this guy was, and so they started doing a little research and looking into who Roy J was. And what they would find online were videos of a stand-up comedian of this guy, Roy J, and his really strange and even kind of off-putting performances. And many people, upon watching these videos, seem to kind of sense that these videos might be AI generated, despite the fact some of these videos had been on YouTube for over 10 years, long before this type of AI technology existed. Some people in the thread were also claiming that when they had initially tried researching Roy J, they couldn't find any information on him. But after they came back later, they suddenly found a bunch of search results for him that weren't there previously. Like, for example, this guy was claiming when he originally looked up Roy J, there wasn't a Wikipedia article, but upon looking it up later, all of a sudden there was a really fulfilled one. This whole situation kind of culminated into people basically theorizing that Roy J was not a real person that ever actually existed. Instead, some organization or some AI has recently created Roy J, and they are trying to retroactively insert him into history despite the fact he was never there. So what does this theory have going for it? Well, first and foremost, the videos available online of Roy J are admittedly very strange. Roy J's comedy act is just very bizarre and hard to explain without you watching it. His comedy routine basically involves him getting up on stage. He's usually wearing a sleeping gown or a prisoner's outfit or something, and he kind of dances across the stage, and every once in a while he'll crack a lukewarm joke at the audience. And in between jokes and dancing, he will randomly shout the phrases slither and spook. I will also point out that some of the videos do sort of have kind of an AI generated feel to them. There are moments where sometimes it seems like, his body or his eyes will morph in a way that's not really natural or very human. Although I should also point out that these videos seem to be suffering from quite a bit of digital video compression and artifacting, and I think that might be the reason there are these just weird frames where he doesn't even look human, his face is stretching out too far. At the end of the day, I don't think Roy J is the product of a rogue AI that's trying to insert him into history or some organization trying to do this. Looking around online, there are just so many different sources that mention Roy J. If you just go on the Wikipedia page, there's a million different outward links to different sources that mention Roy J. There are quite a lot of YouTube videos about him. There's even pretty old Facebook groups that acknowledge him as a real comedian. And pretty much all of these sources pretty consistently describe Roy J as this Norwegian British comedian who just had a really strange performance. And he was just kind of this C-list celebrity who had his 15 minutes of fame, then just kind of fell back into obscurity. And, as to why people on 4chan were claiming they couldn't get search results for him or search results were changing, I think you can mostly just chalk that up to people on 4chan just LARPing and making stuff up. But I think the real interesting part of this story is the fact that this is not totally infeasible. Here's a random video I made with Google VO. This is Google's AI video creation tool. All I did was add a video compression effect over the video, and it already looks fairly convincing. If an organization wanted to, they probably could create a fake historical figure and insert him into history pretty easily. There aren't really any more technological hurdles. Really, the only technical hurdle that's still there that's preventing you from creating a fake historical figure is you would need to figure out how to backdate stuff on YouTube or Wikipedia decades into the past. And this isn't really possible unless you somehow hack one of these websites or have an insider. reallifesuperheroes.net. So many of you guys are probably familiar with the concept of real-life superheroes. Phoenix Jones is probably the most well-known, prominent real-life superhero who would patrol the streets of Seattle wearing a supersuit that he made out of a bulletproof vest, and he would try to stop crime. How much he actually helped is up for debate. He also got busted for selling MDMA to a police officer in 2020, but that's besides the point. What if I told you the superhero universe doesn't stop with Phoenix Jones? In fact, there might be a superhero in your very city. This is where the website reallifesuperheroes.net comes in. This is basically a Wikipedia of all the different real-life superheroes that are out there right now. Probably my favorite section of this website is the map. You can just look at Earth and see all the different active superheroes. For example, in Seattle, we got Red Ranger. We got Justin Service. What else we got here? In Brazil, we got this guy out here. Japan's got this clown. Most of these superhero guys aren't taking it to the level that Phoenix Jones was. It seems like most of them are just doing like community outreach stuff, giving food to the homeless. RuneScape in New York City. So, of course, many of you guys are probably familiar with RuneScape. RuneScape is a pretty old MMO video game that continues to be pretty popular to this day. It's set in a fantasy world, and you can go around doing quests and leveling up your character and making gold. So the very first mention of the phrase or term RuneScape in New York City comes from a conspiracy knowledge chart that was posted on 4chan in 2017. These knowledge charts are just kind of a long list of conspiracy theories, and on the list was RuneScape in New York City. Following the appearance of this phrase on this chart, this phrase began appearing other places on the internet too. It later began appearing on other iceberg charts and in different 4chan threads. But the thing is no one really knew what this strange phrase was actually referring to. RuneScape in New York City is such an oddly specific phrase that it sounds like it has to be referring to like a specific conspiracy theory, right? One person on 4chan suggested that it might be referring to a strange incident that occurred in New York in 2012. Basically, what happened was a 19-year-old kid met up with this other guy in New York under the pretenses that he was going to buy RuneScape gold from him. The kid was going to pay this guy $3,300 in exchange for 4.7 billion RuneScape gold. However, when they actually met up, the 19-year-old ended up pulling a BB gun on him and using it to coerce him into giving him the gold for free. Of course, the guy didn't know it was a BB gun. He thought he was actually being held at gunpoint, so he just transferred the gold. This incident led to the 19-year-old having to serve 6 months in jail. So is this what RuneScape in New York City is referring to? Of course, this isn't really much of a conspiracy theory. This is just like an event that transpired. And so there are some other explanations for RuneScape in New York City. I've seen some people online suggest that this phrase actually refers to kind of a conspiracy theory that games like RuneScape are actually operating as kind of like a money laundering operation. Of course, the in-game currency does have real life value. Probably the most unhinged explanation I've seen for RuneScape in New York City comes from this 4chan post right here. Basically, the post claims that the user is aware of some research going on that is tied to a guy by the name of Warren Sachs, which, by the way, I couldn't find anything online about this guy. And this research had made an odd discovery regarding the movement of people in New York City and how it syncs up with people in RuneScape. What this research had found was that the movement of characters in RuneScape seems to perfectly sync up with the movement of people in New York City. Like, for example, if you were to watch a character in RuneScape, get up and go out and start grinding XP, there would be a person in New York City whose movements would sort of sync up with that character. Like, they would get up and they would go to work, kind of like a real life grindy activity. The post then goes on to claim that RuneScape is actually a technology that's secretly being used to control people digitally. So obviously this story is probably made up, but we still haven't answered the question of what RuneScape in New York City is actually referring to. Is it referring to any of these theories? What's going on here? The truth is, we'll probably never know exactly what this is referring to unless someone can track down the original creator of this conspiracy theory chart and just ask them what they meant when they put this on there. And for the last couple years, people have just been kind of retroactively making up stories that sort of fit the phrase RuneScape in New York City and just parroting the phrase around. Also, honestly, there is a significant chance that it might not even be referring to anything at all, and it was just kind of thrown on there to confuse or waste people's time. A lot of these charts have quite a bit of stuff like that sometimes. Jenkem. So, let's talk about Jenkem. There's really an endless amount of different drugs you can try out there, all offering different unique effects. Probably one of the most unhinged drugs ever is something called Jenkem. So what is Jenkem? Well, the story goes is that Jenkem is a drug that offers euphoric and hallucinogenic effects. But what is it? A variety of sources online will tell you that Jenkem is made out of raw sewage that is left in an enclosed bottle and then let to ferment. The fermentation creates an off gas that you can then huff and then experience the euphoric and hallucinogenic effects. It's Jenkem. It's like water that's been fermented and then you huff it. So where does this whole Jenkem thing come from? I mean, is this even legit? This honestly sounds like some sort of April Fool's Day hoax. So from what I can tell, the very first mention of Jenkem on the internet comes from two reports that came out in the 90s. One of these reports came from IPS, and the other one came from BBC. Both of these reports claim that in Zambia, teens and preteens were collecting sewage to make Jenkem. Okay, but besides these two reports from the 90s claiming that kids in Zambia were doing Jenkem, is there any other further evidence of Jenkem legitimately being a thing? Honestly, there are basically no reports of people actually doing Jenkem in the United States or really anywhere except for Zambia in that original report. I did find one case which kind of suggests someone was doing Jenkem. Basically, I found this story of how in 2010 in Florida, a landlord had to evict their tenant because they were collecting raw sewage in the apartment, and the police suspected that the tenant was collecting it so they could create, the off gases that they could later huff and get high on. But really, there is very little evidence that Jenkem use was ever really a widespread thing. Despite that, there have been a handful of reports over the years warning people of Jenkem. One of the more funny things that has happened with Jenkem is in 2007, a sheriff's office in Florida made this kind of internal memo for the police department that was designed basically to warn people of the dangers of Jenkem and what it is and why kids might be taking it. From what I can tell, the police department didn't make this pamphlet as a joke. They legitimately were kind of concerned that Jenkem was going to be a problem in the area. The thing is, though, is the images on this pamphlet that show a kid doing Jenkem are not legit images. These images come from a website called Totsi.com, and basically this person had made a hoax post on this website of them supposedly doing Jenkem. They weren't actually doing it. It seems as though the police department probably fell for this hoax a little bit here, though. horselaugh.com. So horselaugh.com is a website that garnered a lot of attention in early 2025 from YouTube channels that tend to cover strange and creepy content from around the internet. Now, if you visit this website nowadays, there's pretty much nothing here anymore, but if you go on the Wayback Machine and just go back a couple months, you can see how the website used to look. Now, this website used to have a couple different links that would take you to a couple different kind of strange pages, but the reason this website gained as much attention as it did is because this link right here would take you to a page that featured a bunch of different videos that just show a fairly young looking woman, probably a child, sleeping in a completely empty room with a security camera facing her. There is nothing in the room except for her and the bed that she's sleeping in. Now, I'm not going to show any footage of this in my video just because there's a chance that this is just kind of an innocent kid that doesn't need to be on YouTube. I'm sure based on the description I gave you, you can just kind of imagine the scene. Now, of course, this brings up the question, who is this girl? Why is she being recorded? Is she okay? There's been a lot of speculation about what this website was and what the purpose of it was. And as outsiders looking into this situation, we'll probably never get a perfect picture of what was really going on here. But probably the best insight that's come out explaining what this was is a couple different YouTubers who investigated this situation ended up getting into contact with someone who would be the stepson of the site owner. Although this person doesn't like being referred to as his stepson, as he doesn't really like being associated with him. In interviews, he has alleged that the guy running this website had some kind of strange fringe beliefs, and he seems to suggest that he posted these videos online of this girl sleeping because he was trying to connect this girl's autism with the paranormal world so he could perhaps prove something.
You know, or can you guess why Dan would upload videos of Beth sleeping on the Horselaugh website? My best guess is because of his obsession with if he said it, it is true, and he's trying to tie the paranormal world with her condition.
My half-sister. That is her bedroom. Now, the reason why there's nothing in her room in that is because, like I said, she has a mindset of a toddler. She can be a danger to herself. She has seizures, so that's why they have the camera in there. But why he posted the videos online, completely messed up. The autism delusion, he shouldn't have put that online. I mean, he won't accept treatment. He just wants to continue to believe that she is going to snap out of it one day.
Based on how he talks about this situation, it doesn't seem like he's really thrilled with how this girl is being treated, but also it doesn't really seem like he thinks she's in any imminent danger per se, but this is all just his word, and it's hard to draw anything conclusive just as an outsider looking in. I think for this rabbit hole, I'm just gonna leave it here. Kekrok. In 2016, a person on 4chan made a post reminiscing on a video game that they remembered from their childhood called Kekrok. Although this user didn't go into much detail on what this game was about or what it was like, they did mention that the game seemed kind of low budget. He seemed to recall that the game was on the Sega Genesis. Other people in the thread seem to remember that you'd be able to find this game in bargain bins at stores. It wasn't like a big hit or anything. Now online, you will probably find people who claim to remember playing Kekrok and it being a great game from their childhood, but this is because it's become like a meme to say that you love Kekrok, that you loved playing this game as a child. This is because there's pretty much no evidence of this game, ever existing. The earliest mention of Kekrok on the internet just comes from this 4chan post made in 2016. There is literally no evidence of this game ever existing. Despite the fact that this game doesn't even exist, plenty of people have made spoof Kekrok content that you can find on the internet. People have made like fake intro cutscenes, fake music from the game. In fact, someone's actually now made a Kekrok game that you can play. And so, in kind of an ironic turn of events, Kekrok actually does kind of exist now. You can play it in some form. Of course, some people will kind of stumble upon this Kekrok meme, and every once in a while you'll get someone who bites and legitimately starts asking what Kekrok is. Also, at the end of the day, his name is Kekrok, but this does seem to go over a surprising amount of people's heads. Hyperthymesia. Hyperthymesia, also sometimes referred to as HSAM, is an incredibly rare condition that allows people to have an extremely detailed and expansive autobiographical memory. For example, if you give someone with hyperthymesia a random date from their life, they are oftentimes able to give you a pretty detailed explanation of what they did that day. Some people with hyperthymesia seem to kind of not really mind having the condition. They seem to maybe find it useful or just find it interesting, while other people with the condition seem to find it kind of overwhelming, and it makes it hard for them to forget painful memories or cringe-worthy memories. Now, something worth mentioning about people with hyperthymesia is they do not have a perfect photographic memory. On just like standard memory tests, they perform about equally to a normal person. So they don't remember like every single minute detail of, they just like remember things that they did or what happened to them or how they felt due to certain things on certain days. Although people with hyperthymesia have a far superior autobiographical memory, they're also not totally invulnerable to false memories. You know, for example, I was reading a study where they basically asked people with hyperthymesia if they remember watching news footage of United Flight 93 crash in the field on 9/11. Of course, this was the plane headed towards the US Capitol on September 11th, but it actually ended up crashing in a field before it made it to the Capitol. Some of the people with hyperthymesia responded that they did remember watching it crash on the news. The only thing is there's actually no recorded footage of the plane ever crashing ever. No one was able to catch it on video before it crashed. They created the memory of them watching this happen on the news. So it goes to prove that people with hyperthymesia can, also have false memories. The exact reason why people with hyperthymesia have their condition is not really totally understood. Some studies have shown that there seems to be structural differences in patients' brains, but it's still not totally understood. Wizard 101 hacking. Wizard 101 is a wizarding-themed MMO that came out in 2008, and it was fairly popular throughout the 2010s. It was primarily aimed at a younger crowd. In September of 2022, there was a little bit of an incident that occurred with the game, though. So Wizard 101 has a feature where basically, there's an in-game message board that the developers can use to basically just prompt players of what's going on in game. So normally this message board would just tell users servers will be under maintenance, on Monday at 3 a.m. However, on this day, the message board just started getting spammed with messages that seemed to be coming from a disgruntled employee. The in-game message board read things like "dick and balls." Email support at wizard101.com so I can get a raise. The wizard police are after me. The next world is my boss's asshole. King's Isle is the worst company I've ever worked for. Come to room 102 and I'll beat you up. Guys, I need to run. Bradley, come down to the office this instant. The CEO. The person with rogue access has been dealt with and will be taken care of. Fuck you, I still have it. Now, following this incident, King's Isle would put out a statement apologizing for what had happened. Based on these messages, it kind of seemed like this whole, incident occurred because a disgruntled employee. But it seems like King's Isle actually just said it was a hacker from an outside group that did this. It wasn't a guy on the inside who did it. Till this day, not a lot more information has come out about this. Users were offered a free membership for a couple days as compensation. CNN Doomsday Tape. So Ted Turner is the founder of CNN, and in 1998 he did an interview with the New Yorker, and he said something kind of strange in it. He said that in the case of the end of the world, like a nuclear war or something like that, CNN had created an end of the world sign-off for the news network. Then apparently Turner actually pulled out a VHS tape and played the video for the reporter, and it was just a video of a band playing music in front of a building. Or at least that's just how the reporter described it. Of course, a lot of TV channels used to have end of day sign-offs where the broadcast would just, end for the day. A lot of TV channels actually wouldn't run for 24 hours and they'd have to sign off for the end of the day. But CNN was a 24-hour news network, and so they never had an end of the day sign-off. After this report came out, the Turner Doomsday video kind of became a little bit of a legend until in 2009, a man by the name of Mike Balaban landed an internship working for CNN. And after hearing about this video from a professor of his who had ties to CNN, he went digging through CNN's database and he found it. It was titled Turner Doomsday Video in all caps. And the video was pretty accurately described. It's just a military band playing in front of the Turner Mansion, which was the CNN headquarters at the time. They're playing a song called Nearer God to Thee, which many survivors of the Titanic report was the last song they were playing before the ship sank. The video was released to the public in 2015. This is just kind of a quick one I'll throw in here because why not? In 2022, a person on Reddit would make a post where they attached a recording of a strange phone call that they had received. They're basically just asking people if they knew what this was. I'll go ahead and play a little bit of it for you.
Bạn có một văn kiện còn chưa đến thực hiện. Khi người bạn mang theo giấy tờ liên quan đến giải quyết, vui lòng nhấn phím 9 để được hỗ trợ. Đại sứ quán Việt Nam trụ sở tại Mỹ có một tin nhắn đến bạn.
Most people on Reddit just seem to think it was a scam call of some kind. And yeah, I'd have to agree. I don't really think there's much of a rabbit hole here, per se. Radathor. So in the early 20th century, the science regarding the effects of radiation exposure to humans was far less robust than it is now. And so in the early 20th century, there were a lot of consumer goods that were infused with radioactive materials such as radium and were said to provide health benefits to the buyers and users of these products. Probably one of the more prolific examples of a radioactive product you could buy back in the day was something called Radathor. Radathor was distilled water with radium isotopes in it. Radathor was marketed as a kind of energy drink that would cure all sorts of ailments, including impotence. And so this leads us to a man by the name of Eben Byers. Eben Byers was a man who lived during the time of Radathor. The story goes that in 1927, Eben Byers fell off of a train and he ended up breaking his arm. And in an effort to find something to, help him fix his arm, he started drinking Radathor. It's been said that he consumed multiple bottles of Radathor every day for 3 years. It's been estimated he drank around 1,400 bottles of the stuff. Through drinking 1,400 bottles of the stuff, radium began accumulating in his bones. And this led him, of course, to become pretty sick. He began having issues with weight loss and headaches, and his teeth began falling out. By 1930, the FTC started investigating the safety of Radathor, and so they actually asked Eben Byers to testify at some hearings and talk about his personal experience with Radathor. But by that point, he was so sick, he could literally not attend to testify. And so a lawyer was sent to his house so they could get his word on what he thought about Radathor. And upon the lawyer arriving at his house, he found Eben Byers in horrible condition. By the time the lawyer had gotten to Eben Byers, his entire jaw had come off, with only his front 2 teeth remaining. There's a pretty infamous image of this you can find on the internet. You can find it on Google Images. I'm not going to show it in this video because I swear to God you get age restricted for nothing these days, but it's a very memorable image. Eben Byers would die in 1932 due to cancers he had contracted from the drink, and he would be buried in a lead coffin. The February 26th Instagram incident. Of course, many of you guys are familiar with Instagram Reels, and you know, the Instagram Reels algorithm isn't exactly known for being the most stable thing on the planet. Of course, if you scroll Reels long enough, you're eventually going to see some pretty unhinged stuff. However, on February 26th of 2025, something happened with the Instagram algorithm. On this day, Instagram users were suddenly pushed insanely graphic and gory and violent content pretty much out of nowhere. As an avid Instagram Reels user, I experienced this myself. Like, of course, scrolling through Instagram Reels, every once in a while you'll see like a car crash or like just someone getting pretty badly injured, but this was unhinged. I had the misfortune of experiencing the elephant video that day. Imagine if you like tabbed out of this video right now and all of a sudden all your recommended videos were just gore. It was so bad that Instagram did make a response to this incident. They never really went into specifics. They just said it was an error and apologized. Beyond that, they didn't really provide any details. They just said it was an accident. I've seen people speculate that this wasn't an accident. It was actually just Meta testing something out on its users, but I've never seen any like specific evidence for this. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video today. Don't worry, guys, I'll be back indoors next time. I just had to make a quick milk run. If you enjoy what you saw here today, please subscribe. Please, 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 it helps me out. If you have any input on this video, please leave a comment, let me know. And subscribe to my second channel. Like, I got a pretty interesting project coming there soon. I really think you're gonna enjoy it. I've been working on it for a long time. I really think